meeting is being line streamed on Zoom. First, some housekeeping notes. Members, in order for online attendees to hear you, please unmute your microphone when speaking and identify yourself for the record. Second, the meeting is also on Zoom and is being recorded for those of us joining us on Zoom. Please keep your microphones muted unless you are called upon to speak. If you wish to speak during the public comment, please indicate your interest via the chat box or using the raised hand function on the Zoom staff monitoring Zoom will recognize you when it is your turn to speak. Time for introductions and confirm our quorum. Please introduce yourself and the council will represent you. Mayor Brady, you want to start?
Mayor, Tom Hayes, Arlington Heights Northwest Council.
Karen Darch, Barrington, Northwest Council.
Jeff Sherwin, City of North Lake, North Central Council.
Aaron Alaman, CMAP.
Jeff Shelkey, Mayor Batavia, Metro West Council.
Jane Grover, CMAP.
Leon Rockingham, City of North Chicago, Lake County.
Dave Brady, Village of Bedford Park, Southwest Council.
Mary Warner, Village of Worth, Southwest Council.
All right, I've just been advised we don't yet have any other mayors online, so we're continuing the conversation, let's just say.
We can go right to 3.0, your announcement.
2.0 or 3.0?
3.0. Right there.
Okay.
That's fine.
Our next order of business is one of thanks, and I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize 4 of our members who have served their communities, their councils of mayors and their committee and this committee for many years. And I'm going off script here. I'd just like to add that the names that we're about to recognize are people who really have made a difference in the region. And there's some people who get themselves elected the mayor, and they may be in office for 3 terms at 12 years. And at the end of the day, nobody in this room would even know who they are. And now there's a few of those I could name right now. And then there's others that are sitting here at the table who are out and got their presence and their ideas and their positions out there for everybody to know, and their councils are really there to be heard from. And one of the real beauties of CMAP is that it brings everybody from the Chicagoland region together, and we all come from different parts of the region with different demographics and economics and, where the wind's blowing and everything else. So we really do need to have some opportunity to have conversations as a region as to what's really happening. And having been one who's sat here for a long, long time, I will tell you, if there's ever been a time in the history of this region that we need to have this organization, it's now. And from everything I see and hear, not from this organization, but from Washington and maybe to a lesser degree from Springfield, there's a lot of moving parts out there that are changing and may not exist or have been moved, or just a lot of different things are taking place. And so if there's ever going to be a need to have some quality, understandable communication between all of us of what really is happening, now is the moment. We really need to, I think, have that. And if you look at the rest of the world, we really are in a pretty enviable position here, because we don't have the problems that a lot of I've talked to some other mayors from other parts of the country, and I listened to, there's horrors about wildfires and, some of the crime issues that are being taken place. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's flying in the face. And we have some of those types of things, but nowhere near the degree that you've got in other parts of the country. So we're very, very fortunate to have the group of people that we do, and we're here to work together. And we have a strong, very good, outstanding staff here that really understands what needs to be done, how to do it, keep us out of trouble. And if there's ever going to be a need for a group like that, it's right now, because I just turn on the nightly news and shake my head as I see how things change in the government on a day-to-day basis. And we're seeing I had an opportunity to meet with some graduate students from a university recently, and they said that at the end of the day, Illinois is maybe going to be one of the most interesting states in the next 4 years because we've got this president who can't run for reelection, but we have a governor in Illinois that wants to run from the opposition party. I guess he's already got people working for him on it as far as running for governor. And so Illinois may be in a position where there's going to be some people on a national level that may want to try to make Illinois look not so good. And so you think about that, how that could come to be. So I think it's very important that we have all the good things we have now going, and we need to do very hard efforts to keep hold of all that and keep that as part of the presence. So a sad note that I have to do now, I guess, is I'm supposed to present some plaques to a couple people. And do we have?
Maybe celebratory, not sad.
Well, it's sad for me because they're leaving. That's what I'm talking about.
I know.
So let me get photos. Yeah, we're gonna get photos. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna go over here. Let me go to them.
You need to allow time for them to say something.
Northwest Council Mayor, CNAP Council Mayor Executive. Thank you for your service to our region. You really have done the service to the region. You carried a lot of arguments and moments and great thoughts, and we're gonna miss you. So thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. No, I just want to say thank you very much for this honor and for the opportunity to serve. It's been wonderful to work with all of the mayors and with CMAP on transportation issues and everything else. So thank you all and wishing everybody well. Thanks.
And so also regrettably, we're saying goodbye to President Tom Hayes from Arlington Heights, and your Arlington Heights, the Northwest Council of Mayors, the CMAP Council of Mayors Executive Committee, and we thank you for your service. And Mayor Hayes is a guy that you see on TV all the time. And he's got some things going that I wish you the best with that. I don't know where all that lands. He and I have kind of a private joke between us. His city administrator, I taught. He was in my office for 2 or 3 years. And at one point I had a conversation with him that when the guy who was the administrator was going to retire, I was going to promote him. And he knew that, but better offers came along. And so he left me and went another place before he ended up with you. But great guy. And so you're in good hands, in my opinion. So give that to you. And thank you.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you, Mayor Schulke, and you did a great job with our village manager, that's for sure. I always say, in 34 years on the village board, my 2 best votes are hiring the 2 village managers that we've had. If you, some of you may remember Bill Dixon, who we hired in 1992, and then Randy Recklaus in 2014. So those are the 2 best votes I've ever taken. You need to have good people working for you, and those are certainly 2 of the best. So you did a great job with Randy Recklaus. My only regret is that I didn't have more time to spend devoting to efforts like this here in CMAP and other things in the Northwest Municipal Council, because I do have a full-time job as an attorney just a few blocks from here, which I walked over from this morning. And so, but I've done as good a job as I could have hoped in the 12 years that I've been serving. And so I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. And the record is for writing, and we do have a quorum.
So we're very pleased to announce that Mayor Michelle Nelson from South Council of Mayors has arrived and has joined the meeting. We thank you because you now create a quorum for us to legally have a meeting. Yeah, well, thank you for all your efforts. So,
2.0, then we'll approve minutes.
so now I gotta go back to script here. So we can now go ahead and approve the minutes?
From
Okay,
September.
yeah. So, we've got all the attendance taken, so we do have the quorum, so. All right, the next thing is item 2.0, approval of minutes from the September 24th, 2024 meeting. Are there any questions or additions to the meeting minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and second,
I just have a question. Did we have a quorum at that meeting
Yes.
in September? Okay, so it was the last meeting we didn't have the quorum at. Okay, very good.
all right, we have a motion and second for the approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's approved and the minutes can be put on the record. And now we are joined this morning by CMAP Executive Director Aaron Allman with more and a report of more news and a report from the agency.
Well, thank you, Mayor Shilkey, and it's good to be here again this morning with all of you. I want to just reiterate my thanks for Mayor Hayes and President Darch for their service. Also with President Greg Lungmas from Northfield and Mayor Van Duzen, who aren't here today, but they too will also be rotating off Council of Mayors, and we wish them all the best in the future. It has been just a pleasure to work with you over the years. And so on behalf of the CMAP Board and the MPO Policy Committee, we truly thank you for all of your contributions to Northeastern Illinois. And wish you all the best. I mean, I'm excited to talk with you about what you have on deck for the future. So this, because it's the first meeting that we've had since the transition at the federal level, I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you this morning talking about some of the executive orders that impact our work and some information from the U.S. Department of Transportation, because we're monitoring those things closely because it has the potential to impact the way that we allocate dollars out to the region and the way that we've been talking about our projects recently. So there have been several executive orders that affect a CMAP, which is a federally funded organization. But I'll also just remind you, we have a strong state regional planning role as well. We are a regional entity created by the state of Illinois that gives us different authorities as well. So there has been, again, like I've said, numbers of executive orders that have created some uncertainty in terms of our projects and our programming activities. Again, we are still unclear, so I don't have any satisfying answers, I'll say, for the most part, on how some of these executive orders and DOT policies should be implemented. We recognize that they're interested in changing policy, but they have yet to sort of clarify how we should be adopting or adapting to those policy signals that they've been given. One of the issues that we've been contending with is on our discretionary grants for our Safe Streets for All program. We are working with all of the counties to develop safety action plans. We did put those on pause, but have restarted that work and are cutting out the work that was related to the grant application focused on Justice 40. So we did get direction that that work can continue with some modifications. The grant for our climate pollution reduction grant, which was issued to the Mayor's Caucus with CMAP as a key technical partner, again, is something that we've been figuring out how to move forward on. Again, some of those activities are funded through our Unified Work Program funding and some through the grant through EPA. So again, there are several lawsuits that are in process right now, which is again puts us in this precarious space where we're not exactly sure what the outcome is going to be and how we move forward on that. So we're trying to move forward with the things that we do have clarity on, and again, sort of pausing some of the things that we don't necessarily have clarity on. USDOT has also issued several directives that change the priorities and goals for the federal transportation investments. There's a question, again, as I mentioned, of how those things will be applied. We will continue to work with our federal peers, I met with the Federal Highway Administration Division Director early last week to hear from him, to understand what they're paying attention to, but they also are impacted by some of the changes. They've gone from about 34 staff to 19 staff, just based on people who were in their probationary period and hiring freezes and folks that maybe lived a little bit farther from the office who won't be able to go back to a sort of daily commute of 2 hours each way. So again, we're trying to make sure that all of the review and approval processes that we have in place that keep our transportation projects and funding moving forward continue to happen in the same seamless way that it has been happening. There was a pause last week, or not a pause, but we had been directed to send all of that information to DC. It appears as though DC no longer wants all of that information to go to them and is relegating those responsibilities back to the state federal offices, which is, I think, good for us. So we'll continue to keep you posted, but if you or your executive directors of your councils have questions, don't hesitate to have them reach out to us. We can share what we do know, and we can share what potential impacts there might be, but when we have sort of written clarity around some of these guidance and policy changes, we will be sure to share them with everyone here. I'll pause and see if there are any quick questions on federal activities.
I would just, I would just say that as the mayors who, a number of us are represented by different congressmen. And I think it would be helpful to the mayors if some particular issues come up that have some significant impact, that maybe you could fire out a couple of paragraph note or memo about what it means to us as a region, and that would allow us as mayors then to get in the face of our congressmen. And I'm going to be in the face of a couple of them here in the next couple of weeks. So, I mean, I know some of the other mayors that are sitting here are too. So we just need to have some, strong communications ideas as to what our concerns are here. Are we losing funding, or is there some program that's in jeopardy that we're doing some really great stuff with? I think we need to have some names and ideas of what is really in our face. So I would say, you could say, well, the staff or the chairman at the last meeting asked us to do this, so don't put the blame on yourself trying to stir the pot here. But I think the mayors would be very anxious to have the opportunity to share some sentiments with either a senator or one of our senators, or specifically our congressman, who we probably all know on a pretty, and they certainly know who we are, and I think we could get their attention.
Yeah, great point. And we are putting together sort of a update document that we had sent around to all the council executive directors that we can share with you all individually as well. We are sharing information with our congressional delegation as well, so that they're aware, but I think no added emphasis will be turned down. And I think one of the other things that I didn't mention too is sort of the work of the EV charging initiatives that were happening at the state level. Again, those seem to be been put on pause as well. And so I know that many of you do care about EV charging in your communities. We're trying to get our arms around understanding why or when or how we can continue to move those things forward here as a region. Anyone else?
Anybody, any of the mayors have any? I've kind of spoke, but does anybody want to add to what I've said, or?
Just a quick question. How do we see the reduction in staff impacting us directly? Are there any projects that are not moving as fast as you'd like them to move? What's
Yeah.
the impact?
Yeah, so the federal staff that participate in this region have been reduced to 3. And so I think our concerns are every time we do TIP approvals and there are new projects going into the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program, those need a federal sign off before dollars are able to be allocated and moved. So we're hyper aware of the fact that any delay on that end of things could potentially delay project lettings. And so we don't want that to happen. Those federal staff also do participate in the planning elements and the environmental and engineering elements of big projects that are moving on to things that IDOT District 1 is moving on. And so it remains to be seen whether or not we'll have a partner at the table for those initiatives to help us think through sort of what the rules and regulations are on that end. I think those are sort of the primary concerns that I have as they see their reduction in force.
And you said we have 3 now. It was reduced to 3. What was it before?
Do we know if it was like 6? Yeah, I think probably half of what we had before. And they had a couple of vacancies too. So I know a couple folks are pulling double duty. They had a safety planner that's now sort of stepping in and serving in sort of the planning role. So again, it's as we move our safety work forward too, like, does that get delayed because we've got people, doing multiple jobs?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Just a couple other CMAP notes, then I'll roll through our budget, annual budget and work plan for FY 2026 starts July 1st. It was approved by the board and the MPO Policy Committee. We're working out the details with IDOT right now before we finalize our grant agreement. We've also begun development of the next regional transportation plan that's ongoing. It's due in October of 2026, but we have started to sort of get our arms around what the priorities may be with stakeholders from across the region. There is a public questionnaire that's available, and we'd love to have it in your newsletters. I'm sure we've sent it out to you already, but just to hear from folks about what they care about related to transportation. You have at your desk here this Northeastern Illinois Priorities Investments book. It was previously called the IIJA Priority Investment Book. We've sort of cleaned it up so that we're focused on sort of a more broad application of projects here. But these are sort of the biggest investment projects across the region that we want our congressional delegation to be aware of as well. And then just one highlight here, I think, again, the partnership that we have around this table with our counties, with our implementing agencies as well, and with you, has already had a powerful impact in the results that we've seen through the investments that every agency has been granted. In total, this past year, or in 2024, the region secured more than $1.27 billion in federal funding for transportation projects. And I think that is a number that we should be proud of, and a number because that is so high because we've done such a good job as a region collaborating on what our priorities are here. So those were just my cliff notes on activities that have happened at the agency since you all last met. But again, don't hesitate to reach out if you or your staff have questions about the implications or ongoings of what's happening at the federal level. We're really working through our associations to understand and keep apprised of what the impacts might be here locally.
You are done. with
I
it.
am done.
That's a lot of information, a lot of questions. Anybody in the room right now, before we lose Aaron, have any further questions or comments? Well, we'll all keep our eye on you. So thank you for the great job you're doing.
Thanks so much.
All right, moving to 3 as proposed meeting schedule, and Sarah Stopes is here to talk about that.
Next slide, please. All right, good morning, mayors. Sarah Stolpe, analyst and staff liaison to this committee. Today, I would like to share with you the proposed 2025 schedule, understanding we're about halfway through it now. Staff selected these quarterly meetings to allow the committee to convene prior to the MPO Policy Committee and CMAP Board, with the exception of the January meeting, in order to uphold your role as an advisory body to these groups. This year, we look forward to furthering discussions on MPO planning and programming processes, CMAP's long-range vision plan, the safety action program, the legislative agenda, and more. The Council of Mayors Executive Committee will also play a key role in reviewing the staff recommended program for the locally programmed Transportation Alternatives Program, the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, and the Surface Transportation Program Shared Fund resulting from CMAP's latest transportation call for projects. With this all in mind, staff recommends approval of the remainder of the 2025 meeting schedule as shown before you. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions about upcoming content or meeting dates.
Anybody have any questions of Sarah? Now I'd entertain a motion for approval of the proposed.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving to 4, new business. We're going to have a presentation on electric vehicles in Illinois by Christina and Edith Macker.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. Sarah, do we have a clicker I could use, or would you like to? Okay, perfect. All right. So first of all, thank you to Jane for the invitation. Very excited to be here today. My name is Cristina Otero, and I'm the senior manager for, is that too loud?
This is good. I'm just gonna.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's better. And I'm the senior manager for beneficial electrification at ComEd. And we are here today, Edith Macra from the Metropolitan's Mayor Caucus and myself, to provide an update on what we're doing in Illinois in the electric vehicle space and how much progress we've made really over the last year. So I'll talk first high level about where we are as a state and what ComEd is doing and has done. And then I'll hand over to Edith to tell us a little bit more about the EV readiness program that the Metropolitan's Mayor Caucus has been leading in partnership with us. So next slide, please. We can actually jump 2 ahead. Okay, so first, just a general introduction. Perhaps all of you are aware of the fact that Illinois has a state goal of getting to 1 million electric vehicles by the year 2030. I want to start by saying that the term electric vehicles is used in different contexts. For the state, what 1 million EVs means is fully battery electric vehicles, meaning there's no gas engine, there's a battery, and you can plug them in to charge them. Several of you may have heard there's also plug-in hybrids. They have a gasoline engine, a battery, and you can plug them in. Those are not counted in the 1 million goal. And when I talk EVs today, I'm also not counting that. Similar thing with just hybrids that you don't plug in, not counting those. So really fully batteries. So we are at about 130,000 fully battery electric vehicles registered in Illinois today. Now that may sound small compared to the 1 million target by 2030, but if you think of back in 2010, that's not too long ago, there were 25 electric vehicles in Illinois. So we've really come a long way, and you're seeing that continue to grow exponentially. So it's really very exciting. And the state estimates that we're going to need about 36,000 public charging ports to support the 1 million EVs. And we are about 4,000 today, public. So we need to increase the public charging ports by about a factor of 10 over the next few years. So again, we've come a huge way, but we still have quite a bit to go. And that's part of why, if we move on to the next slide, please. Well, actually, before we talk about CEJA, when I say my title, beneficial electrification, I often get the question, what does that even mean? So I want to make sure that we're all talking the same. So when I say electrification, I'm talking about the conversion of the fossil fuels. It could be gasoline, it can be propane, it can be diesel, into electricity. So a good example is electric vehicles, but you may have also heard of, for example, heat pumps. Now, beneficial electrification is when the conversion to electric actually leads to net benefits, things like environmental benefits, cost savings, and so on. So in Illinois, actually, I'll talk about ComEd's beneficial electrification plan. We can only file a plan that is beneficial. We have to show to the Illinois Commerce Commission that it's leading to net benefits to our customers. So next slide, please. So going back to the state's goal, given this challenge to get to 1 million EVs and to increase our public charging and private charging infrastructure very significantly, as part of the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that was passed in 2021, there was a provision that the largest electric utilities in the state file a beneficial electrification plan. And so we filed our plan in 2023. Well, 2022, it was approved in 2023. And we are now in the last year of our first plan. We're actually going to start our second plan next year. And what I want to talk about today is what that plan is, what we've accomplished, and then also talk about the EV readiness program when Edith comes in. But one thing I want to highlight is this plan, even though it includes some heat pumps, most of the heat pumps that ComEd is giving incentives for are part of a different plan, which is the energy efficiency plan. This is heavily focused on electric vehicle infrastructure and fleet electric vehicles. So many of your municipalities are interested in installing public charging infrastructure, in electrifying your fleet. There's a ton of incentives and education for that I'll talk about. One heavy focus area, even though this is available to anyone, a heavy focus area is communities that are either low-income communities or that are located in equity investment eligible communities, which we denote as EIEC. So that's a theme that you will see all throughout. All right, so one slide, next slide, please. So in a nutshell, what this first beneficial electrification plan that was approved by the Illinois Commerce Commission is we were approved to invest $231 million over 3 years, so 2023 through 2025, in multiple programs to encourage the transition to electric, again, especially for transportation. And even though there's multiple aspects to it, the ones I'm going to focus on today is 3 new programs related to transportation electrification, both charging infrastructure as well as fleet vehicles. We rolled those out exactly a year ago. I'll talk about those. And then we're also investing about $6 million a year on customer education and awareness. The 3 biggest barriers that we continue to hear to electric transportation are 1, upfront cost, 2, charging availability, and 3, customer education. So what Edith is going to talk about is part of our customer education awareness investments. So let's move on to the next slide, please. So many of you may have seen this. In November, we rolled our first education awareness campaign in train stations, highways, you name it, trying to bring people to our website and make them aware of the fact that, ComEd is invested in electrifying. Next slide, please. And then soon after, in February of 2024, we rolled out these 3 new programs, which are the core of our beneficial electrification plan. And they are rebate programs for residential customers, but primarily for business and public sector entities to get rebates for charging infrastructure and fleet electric vehicles. So for your residents at home, we're giving up to $3,750 for customers to buy a charger and pay for the installation at home. That's about $5 million a year total budget. But the largest part of the plan is the 2 on the right. The one in the middle is for fleet electric vehicles, and we've had several municipalities participate. If you want to electrify your fleet for your municipality or if your business as well, we're offering rebates up to $180,000 for all vehicle classes to go to electric vehicles for the purchase of the vehicles. And then for public and private charging infrastructure for business and public sector entities, we're offering rebates for both level 2 and level 3 charging infrastructure. For those of you who are not as familiar with what that means, when you plug in your vehicle to a regular outlet, that's a level 1 charger. A level 2 charger is the one that charges usually overnight, and you get an electrician to get it installed. And a level 3 charger, also called the DC fast charger, is the one that you can charge usually in less than an hour. And so one key feature of these programs is that we want to make sure, again, that not all the funds go to just only a sub-part of our population. So we're reserving more than half of the funds and offering higher rebates for low-income customers and communities and those that are part of EIEC. All right. So what I'm going to do right now is, aside from these rebates, I want to walk you through some of the strategic initiatives that we rolled out last year after these programs, and then open the room for any questions and pass it over to Edith. So next slide, please. All right. So before we go to initiatives, what have we achieved? So again, it's been 12 months, pretty much exactly. And in only a year, we've incentivized the installation of almost 4,000 charging ports at home, as well as in businesses and municipalities, public and private. We've also incentivized the purchase of over 250 fleet electric vehicles. And what I'm proud of is the fact that more than 70 of those are in the category of medium duty, heavy duty, and buses, which are one of the most polluting of all, and is really our target, even though we offer rebates for every vehicle class. And then what I am personally most proud of is that of the dollars that we've given out in this first year, 61% has been to low income and EIEC equity eligible customers. So, vehicle electrification, EVs, tends to be seen as inequitable. And I think that's why all these efforts to make this transition more equitable are so important. We've also looked at the data, how much of the costs of each project, whether it's buying a vehicle or installing charging infrastructure, have we covered with these rebates? And it's been almost 70% for charging infrastructure projects. So if you're interested in charging infrastructure for your citizens, again, think about this number, because you're going to have most of the costs covered with just our rebates. For fleet vehicles, they're more expensive by nature. It's been about 20% covered with our rebates. All right, so I'll move quickly through the strategic initiatives. This is more for awareness than anything else. Next slide, please, Sarah. We can keep moving, actually. We can skip this one. Okay, so one of the first things that we rolled out was an EV service provider network. So in addition to offering rebates, we're focused on workforce development and really increasing jobs through these programs. So we built a network of EV service providers. These can be electricians, civil workers, right? Everyone who's involved in the installation of charging stations, which can be a hefty deal for the bigger ones that are public. And they essentially can give customers the rebates directly in the bill, such that the customer doesn't even have to see that cost and pay it up front, but it's deducted from the electrician's bill. And so we right now have actually that number is up to almost 100 by now, and about 35% of the members of our network are diverse business entities. So something we're also very proud of. Next slide, please. And anyone can join, so this is an open network. In September, we actually presented with Mayor Van Dusen with one of the very first checks for fleet electric vehicles in Skokie. So a big check was handed over. This hasn't been the only one, but it was one of the first. So that was a great event with the governor. Next one, please. In October, our focus has been how do we continue reducing the upfront costs? Because rebates is a check that you get after the fact. But a lot of folks don't have the upfront cash to even make that first investment. So we've partnered up with fleet EV dealers and manufacturers to give point of sale rebates such that if you're going to electrify your fleet, you can go to them and get that cost deducted upfront from the sticker price. So again, another effort to reduce the upfront costs. Next one, please. Next one was pre-owned fleet vehicles. We were challenged by the fact that is equity front and center. Why are you only giving rebates to new vehicles? And, some people think that there are actually not a lot of pre-owned electric vehicles, but there actually are quite a few, especially in the light duty vehicle class. So we've seen this grow very fast since we launched it in October. And you get the same rebate for a pre-owned vehicle than for a new vehicle, by the way. So it's a great deal for folks who want to start with a pre-owned vehicle. Next slide, please. And then we can move on to the next one. We were given an award for our efforts in the EV space. We're very proud of that. But I want to close with a few of the initiatives before I hand it over to Edith that are related to customer education awareness. We have a lot of resources. If you go to comet.com/EV, that's all here as well as in some of the handouts, or comet.com/clean, so you don't have to memorize anything, or you can Google it. But this has been a big one because a lot of businesses and municipalities have asked us, listen, I want to install charging stations, but I don't want it to be a huge project that requires a lot of electrical upgrades that may cost a lot of money and take time. Can you tell me where there's electrical capacity? Where is the best place for me to install my charging stations? And so we rolled out a map that's called the EV load capacity map. It's an interactive map. You can enter any address and look at what's the estimated capacity for you to install. Can it be 2 chargers, 4 chargers, 10 chargers, and start citing those stations. Next one, please. And then lastly, we also rolled out multiple tools that are called calculators for residential customers or fleet customers, where you can go in and see how much can I save? How much can my municipality save if I transition to fleet? What kind of vehicles are out there? What kind of charging infrastructure will I need? How will I charge? It's a self-service portal where you can learn a lot. However, if self-service is not for you, next slide, please, we also offer fleet electrification assessments. So these are more sophisticated, where we'll sit down with you. We will, ask you a lot of questions on what you're trying to get. We'll work with you over some time, and then you'll end up having a report presented by us and discussed with us that tells you, this is what we recommend. This is how much we expect it'll cost you. This is how much we expect you will save over the life of the vehicles, and so on. So these fleet electrification assessments have been actually very, very well received by our customers. And then if we go to the next slide, this is really just a summary. So I want to close out by saying, again, we're finishing our first year of all these new EV programs. We're seeing the electric vehicle count in the state increase faster since we launched our program, which I'm very excited about. And we've seen the dollars going out be really heavy equitable, going to low income and EIEC. We're very excited. We have funding until the end of this year, but our proposed investment for the years 2026 through 2028 is with the Illinois Commerce Commission. We started that process almost a year ago, and we expect a final order by the end of March. We received a proposed order a couple of weeks ago, and it's a very positive outcome. So it's going to be largely a continuation of the efforts that we started and that we've partnered up with Edith and the Metropolitan's Mayor Caucus on as it pertains to customer education awareness and EV readiness. So I'm going to hand it over to Edith next. I'll also take any questions now or after Edith goes.
Any questions?
Thank you. And I suggest directing technical questions to Christina. She's the engineer and knowledgeable. I'm Edith Macra. I'm the Environment Director for the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. Thank you so much for having me here today to just talk about the municipal role in EV readiness. Next slide, please. So when we created a climate action plan for the Chicago metro region, we categorized what municipalities can do on climate action into these three nifty icons, and it's lead, encourage, and enact. And these should be very familiar to you, but just in the context of EVs and being ready for transportation electrification, the program that we created really leverages these tools and the capacity that municipalities have that is very unique for driving transportation electrification. We created a program we started 5 years ago in terms of planning and research with the purpose of a program is to make EVs and EV charging more expedient, affordable, and accessible for all residents and businesses. We were looking, of course, to reduce emissions from transportation emissions to reduce impacts of climate change. And we were looking very much at leveraging the unique authorities and strengths of local government to make this happen. Next slide, please. And so I put this slide up because the EV charging ecosystem, there are certainly components of EV charging and transportation electrification that are a little bit outside of municipalities, but most of what local governments do touch on all components. You know, most charging occurs at home, but of course we want to have access to charging at work. We want to have publicly accessible charging. We want to help support fleet electrification. And then more on the national and state level, we want to make sure that you can go where you want to go across the state and across the country with access to public charging. Next slide, please. So we created an EV readiness checklist, and this is the foundation for our program. And we thought long and hard about this. And if you don't know, the EV readiness program is the pioneering program for municipal preparedness in the U.S. We had a parallel program that we were partnering with that worked in the Minnesota area and now has gone national. We really had to sort of bump our own way along, and we had support from ComEd as we started doing this. Some of you may remember almost 5 years ago, the caucus went around to the COGS for a series of listening sessions to say, how do we create this checklist? We also put together a technical advisory team with more than 70 experts, including IBEW, some of the charging companies, transportation expert, fleet experts, and created a checklist very tailored for local governments. And the EV readiness checklist has 9 categories. And this is the only time I'll go through them in detail, so you'll see some other examples of it. But we're looking for an upfront commitment, pretty typical for any type of a certification or designation program. Very important category is working on zoning and planning. I'll share some details about that. Permitting and inspection, completely a local government issue. I'll talk about that very briefly, but want to make sure that that municipalities are prepared to permit for EV charging infrastructure. We're looking at safety and training. Make sure that first responders and others understand implications of EV charging and charging infrastructure related to public safety. Parking issues and access. This is very important for many communities where parking is a challenge. Want to make sure that everybody gets to share spaces. New construction is where we look at requirements, if those are desired for new buildings and what the charging capacity might be. Access to EV charging is kind of the equity category to make sure that those who don't have access to charging at home in particular can access it publicly. Municipal fleets, the unique category of local governments in electrifying their own vehicles. Utility engagement, where we work to make sure that we're supportive of an ecosystem that thrives and a grid that is resilient. Community engagement, using the unique tools of local government to help educate and involve residents. and the community, and then also the role in market development and finance to drive us towards that million EV goal in Illinois. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of the EV readiness checklist. It is it's an Excel masterpiece. It's highly technical, but there's point system to it. It also works in scoring. So anyone who enrolls in this program has access to this checklist, and that's how we drive progress towards designation or certification to become an EV-ready community. Next slide, please. And so it's a recognition or designation program. If you're familiar with the Soul Smart program, which is something the Mayor's Caucus was very active in for solar, driving solar development, the EV readiness program is modeled after that. We support all of our communities to earn at least EV ready bronze, and that is a set of requirements that are very fundamental. There's some flexibility for points that are tailored to what a municipality can do, wants to do, that is more appropriate for them. So we have 100 points to get to bronze, and all of the communities that you hear me talk about that are EV ready are at least bronze. We have very few. Silver takes some of the EV readiness fundamentals and adds additional features to it. One of the ones that you'll hear me talk about are additional zoning actions and then the fleet work. So we have one community that right now has silver, and we have one community that has earned gold. And again, there's a lot of flex points that allows a municipality to do the fundamentals and the things that are most appropriate for their own community. Next slide, please. And so the rest of it I'll go through in terms of what EV readiness looks like at the local level. That also happens to be reflected in some of the EV ready community accomplishments. Next slide, please. So one of the first things, and these are all in terms of requirements. So to earn bronze, we ask every municipality to assign a staff, to work on this, but to do investigation, you can do it through the Secretary of State to find out how many EVs registered in your community. That's baseline metrics. And then we also ask them to look for chargers. But what I wanted to point out, and you probably can't read that, but I want to point out the number of EVs registered per 1,000 residents. The state in Illinois, that's in red. And then these are all the communities that we have currently enrolled in the EV readiness program or have already been designated. And you can see the rate of adoption for EVs is considerably higher for the communities participating in the program. Also flagging the counties for reference points, benchmarking there. Next slide, please. And this is a very critical component of EV readiness is the zoning work. And this is a requirement for bronze. We ask every municipality to review their zoning codes and look for barriers to EVs and EV charging. We provide a checklist and tools and some expertise. And then the action that is required is to flex requirements for parking to accommodate EV charging equipment. So if you have parking minimums, this would be where you're looking to make those change. And then most of the communities that we work with, once they open up the zoning code, they find some barriers, we make some recommendations, and they develop a text amendment, which we ask them to pass in order to earn EV Ready Bronze. They get silver points for doing some of this advanced work. So this is very important and helpful. Next slide, please. The permitting. Also critical. We have worked with IBEW and some other national partners on the best methodology for developing permits for commercial and residential charging. We are supporting the participants in developing clear, concise, and code compliant permitting and inspection for EV charging. Next slide, please. And this is where we integrate with ComEd. So we, very simple actions, but when we started doing the planning, ComEd was looking to just know where the electric vehicles are in a community. So it's a voluntary registration. But one of the things that Christina talked about was the loads a little bit. Well, actually, EVs can be storage. So if ComEd should ever need to know where those vehicles are, or if they could offer incentives such as time of use charging to encourage charging at a time that would help reduce excess energy on the grid, this is why that integration is useful. So we create a template for communities to build their own EV-ready landing page. And you'll notice this is Hickory Hills has a link to register the vehicles with ComEd. Again, just to integrate. Next slide, please. This is a fun one. Mayor Schilke especially is always suggesting awareness and training for first responders. We partner with the Illinois Fire Safety Institute, which I think Mayor Schilke referred me to at University of Illinois. And we offer training for all municipalities in all cohorts through the EV Readiness Program to participate in hands-on training for safety and just responding to incidents involving electric vehicles. And again, it's at no cost because we partner with ComEd on this program. Next slide, please. And then here's the landing page that I talked about. This helps communities and your residents understand where all of these programs and resources are. So again, this is a model website from the Village of Montgomery, and we provide links to incentives, buying information, locating chargers. These go back to ComEd's incentives that Christina talked about. Next slide, please. And then this one, again, Christina talked about the fleet electrification assessment. For municipalities, this can be a challenging decision to make, is what is the best way to move forward with fleet assessments and which vehicles do we pick? Does it even make sense for us to do this? So as part of the beneficial electrification program, these new fleet electrification assessments have been a real huge boost for the EV readiness program and for helping municipalities move forward. We've had 3 cohorts, and this was only available in the second cohort and going forward. And so the working with ComEd, again, at no cost, a participant, in this case, Kane County, provides information about their fleet, and this was in one location. And then there's information that is provided in terms of how those vehicles are used, what the infrastructure readiness looks like in that particular facility, and how a portion of their fleet can be electrified and whether or not that makes sense to do that, so that you can make smart investment decisions about fleet electrification. Next slide, please. So here's just an overview. The program we've had now 3 cohorts. It takes almost a year to go through the program. We have 40 communities. We're very proud of the involvement throughout the region for 2 counties and 38 municipalities. You'll notice Polo is out there because we serve the entire ComEd region. Next slide, please. And so to join the EV Readiness Program, again, providing this free technical assistance, guided assistance to be ready to capture some of those incentives, investments, and resources for transportation electrification. We have an ongoing EV Readiness Program waitlist. That's on our website. We are kicking off our next cohort in July. We'll graduate the current cohort number 3, in May or June. And to get involved in the program, we're looking for a simple letter of commitment, assignment of staff who can work through the program. And I will say there'll be diverse staff as you go forward, because your building official may not be the same as your fleet manager or your planning staff on zoning codes. We do have a biweekly cohort meeting where we go through details of the program. And then in order to earn the points, we're looking for actions. For an example, if you pass a zoning text amendment, we need to see documentation of that. And so all the points are awarded equitable. The program has credibility. And we've already said a number of times, but ComEd has been a partner on this program really since we conceived the idea of the program. And we have additional support through the IBEW partners, as well as Argonne National Laboratories has been a support of our program. Illinois Alliance for Clean Transportation and others have been involved in the program. And I think that's my last slide. So thank you very much for having us. And if there's any questions, either Christina or I can take on EV fundamentals or the program or electrification, we're happy to entertain.
Any questions?
Sorry. It's going to be up to the budget bill in this month. What we're hearing, things do not look good for the federal grants for the charging stations. I don't know what your take is on that.
Do you know, did you apply? Tell me how you got the grant. Most of them are really troubled, but let me ask how you got.
Through Congressman Caston.
Ah, Okay, we have two EV grants that are federal. One of them is an earmark that we got through Senator Durbin to continue the EV readiness program. It's been frightening, as Director Alleman talked about. There's been a series of executive orders. The first executive order basically canceled the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program and expressed a strong administration preference for fossil fuel powered vehicles. And the federal government is taking some very strong action against electric vehicles. I've also heard that the GSA is requiring some facilities, federal facilities, to disable existing electric vehicles. So it's pretty aggressive against EVs. It appears our earmark for the EV readiness program is going to survive, but no guarantees on that one. So I'm hoping yours, if it's through Congressman Castan's office, will also survive. Of course, that's iffy. We do know, on the other hand, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, or NEVI, which provided resources to states, and it was the part of the ecosystem that I talked about, that interstate, the national network, that program was canceled. We had a $14.4 million grant that was awarded on January 13th that we were going to do pass through to 134 municipalities for 196 charging stations. And that was pretty much rescinded when the new administration took office. So we have not gotten an official word that it's canceled, but everything related, all the communication has been canceled. And again, it appears that that's not a priority. So I hope you're okay. It does appear that some of the pass-through funding that is coming through Illinois may also be difficult to access, which is why it's so incredibly valuable that we have ComEd incentives, as well as the funding that is coming through the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, or CEJA. So it's great that we have the opportunity to keep moving forward, but it's a big hit.
Thank you.
Christina, do you want anything? Okay.
My question is actually for Christina. Do you see any impact on your incentive programs based on what federal mandates may be coming down?
No, our program is approved by the Illinois Commerce Commission, and it's not reliant on federal funds or federal approval.
Other questions? As you know, I'm the mayor of Batavia, and I'm kind of the wild card in the room in this whole thing, not the room, the region. Batavia is a municipally owned electric utility. We're one of the handful of us that, of the cities that don't use Commonwealth Edison directly, although I think we probably get the same power. It's coming over the national grid, and we all share and pay for that. We've got an interesting situation going now, however, in that we had a Sam's Club go out of business. So we had this very large business empty over sitting on Randall Road, which is a high profile traffic area. And now Tesla has arrived, and they have taken over part of the former Sam's Club and are making it into a showroom and distribution center for Tesla cars. And this is proving to be an interesting experience for us. We've had people call the city hall and want to know who owns Tesla. And I guess the answer may be somebody in the White House may have some strong interest in Tesla automobiles. And that being the case, we've already had people asking, well, when's this going to open? Because they haven't opened it yet. And we are told that they're planning to open it next year when the new cars come out. They don't want to start in the mid-year. They want to come out when the new car, which is totally understandable. So now we have people wanting to know, well, when's that going to be? Well, we don't know that. It's not our business, so we don't know that for sure. Where this seems to be going is that I think there are, I would describe this as protest groups that don't like some of the stuff that's being done in Washington. And they think that maybe protesting at a business that's owned by one of the people involved in Washington may be some way to get some message across. I don't want to be in the middle of that, but I'm afraid I may be on my way to be there, because there's that conversation is being asked, and we really don't know what some of the answers are. We have put our own charging stations up in town, and they've been used. The problem we got with that is that being a municipally owned electric utility, we had people down wanting to know, well, who's paying for that electricity that's going into those cars? So then we had to redo distribution devices so that to get it to work in Batavia, you got to put your credit card into it. And then the credit card gets charged so that the people that are getting the electricity from us are paying it by. Do the other charging stations in the region use the credit card? Is that?
I'll say yes, yeah. It's a fairly common model, but if I could ask to go back to the slide of the map, I do want to point out, while you're the wild card, you're an EV-ready community. And so while Batavia is a municipal electric utility, we did make some adaptations in the EV readiness program for muni electric utilities. So Geneva is the other one. And so I have to say how nicely Batavia adapted some of that grid integration to work uniquely in Batavia. And then also sort of pioneering was Batavia offered a municipal rebate for EVs that predated the EV readiness program. So some excellent work coming out of Batavia, even for the wild card that you are. And I didn't know about your Tesla station, but I wish you good luck with, or Tesla showroom. I wish you good luck with that.
Well, I just want to say that everything I've done here, not me, but our city, and I've signed it all, so I guess I've done it. It's not without its challenges. And certainly one of the things that I've got going now is I've got this former Sam's Club, which was, I think, 231,000 square feet, of which only about 44,000 is going to be this Tesla dealership. So I had to agree to rezone the rest of the building into a storage unit situation where you rent spaces in the building and you can drive into it and put your stuff in the, and we didn't allow that in our commercial business area, but to make this work, we agreed to let that happen. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. We're kind of sitting here with our fingers crossed that we don't end up with a bunch of protest groups wanting to come in and picket at the Tesla dealership because of the ownership. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I'll just put the word out that it may be, you may be seeing it in Batavia. So we've got, I know there's some other Tesla dealerships in the region, so we may, they may be getting visited too, but there's a lot of people these days that want to find places to protest things. And I think that's probably something that we'll have to unfortunately enter into some of this conversation as we go forward, given the personalities and the politics that are involved. And I feel good about being able to come in here with my fellow mayors and share that news and ideas with them, because I think it's something that may be on the verge of coming to town, so to speak. So thank you. Anybody else?
The only thing I would say to that is, you know, if electric cars are really good, the marketplace will pick up. If they don't want to buy a Tesla, they'll go to another manufacturer. I mean, the MyPillow guy is out of business, but people are still buying pillows from other people. So, you know, companies that engage in political, they do it at a risk. So if the marketplace moves to another electric car, so be it. But it's really going to come up to the fact electric cars have to prove themselves in the marketplace. And I think that's really the holdback as to why we're not seeing a mass migration to electric cars, because there are a lot of problems with electric cars as far as charging, the charge time, the life of the battery, and so forth. So I think until those are overcome, I think electric cars are going to be kind of not, it's just going to be a while. I mean, the government tried to force everybody to use those fluorescent light bulbs, those curly Q light bulbs. People hated them. LEDs came out without government encouragement, and LEDs have captured the marketplace because they've embraced, the public has embraced LED as better technology. So I think electric cars, if they were that great, we wouldn't have to have all this government encouragement of getting people to use them. So I think electric cars kind of have to prove themselves in the marketplace, and we wouldn't have to have these programs. If they were that great, I think people would just flock to them, and the private marketplace would be putting up the charging stations and the facilities and everything to run these things. So I think electric cars have a ways to go to prove themselves to the general public.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're starting to see a lot of that. And it's also very use case specific, right? There's cases for which an electric vehicle does not make sense. There's cases for where it makes a lot of sense, right? So I think that's where kind of education is important, and the technology continues to evolve. So absolutely agree. And the other last thing I want to say is we have learned that there's a lot of hand-holding needed because it's a new technology for a lot of people, right? So for example, school districts are a great example. School districts have needed a lot of hand-holding from us, and it's been a great partnership, and they're starting to understand how it works. So again, if any of you is interested in finding out more or has questions, please do not hesitate to reach out.
I think the two obstacles really are the life of the battery. Nobody said how long those batteries last and what the cost of the replacement. So if you buy a car and the battery goes out in 10 years and it costs you more to buy the battery than the car's worth, that's one big question mark. And then the second thing is the charge time. I mean, if you can get the electric cars so you could pull into like a gas station type facility, charge your car in 10 minutes and be on your way, I think that would overcome a lot of the problems and we wouldn't have to be having these discussions about the government encouraging all of this.
And please do go to the comet.com/EV website I mentioned, our toolkit, because a lot of the answers to that, what's the battery life? How much will it cost me? Does it make sense for me on a total cost of ownership basis? Are there? Yeah. And we're seeing that right now about 80% or more of EV owners charge at home. So they don't even need the DC fast chargers. There's a lot of debate around whether what's needed, but if we're trying to target audiences or people who also live, for example, in multi-unit dwellings, then installing chargers there is important, right, as well.
People in Chicago who park on the street need to be able to pull in, charge quickly and move out.
Yeah, you're right.
Otherwise, you're not-
Curbside charging is another one. Yeah. What's that, sir?
The price needs to come down for the average person as well.
Yeah, that's true. And for light duty vehicles, we're seeing them now come to cost parity. I think for the medium, heavy duty and buses, the cost differential is still pretty significant. So, yeah.
I see a lot of electric cars are like second cars in more affluent communities. Hinsdale, Elmhurst, yeah, they all have an electric car as their second car, but their primary car is a gasoline car. So I don't see a lot of them in our community.
And I just want to add a little bit, just in terms of the total cost of ownership, while there's upfront costs are certainly higher, the ComEd calculator has the total cost of ownership, and then to look very carefully at the use cases. So if the model for a commute is a residential charging, if you're driving under 300 miles or less a day and you're coming back to domicile to charge, it's a model that really works. The fleet charging, I've been working with municipal fleets since I've started in alternate fuels, and it's difficult for municipalities to really advance on fleet charging because of the way we use fleet vehicles and because there's such a diversity of vehicles and that we often have emergencies and don't have the capacity to be without charging for a long time. But if you're a delivery service fleet that goes out and delivers all day and comes back to a domicile, it's a model that really makes a lot of sense. So as Christina said, it's a use specific, and it isn't universal, but where it can advance, it can make some really strong sense to do so, even economically.
Yeah, and what we're seeing, as Edith mentioned, it really depends on how much you drive, how you drive, what vehicle you have, and so on. But what we're seeing based on all these tools that are out there is for an average residential customer, the savings are typically between like hundreds and several hundred and a few $1,000s a year because of the savings in fuel and maintenance, even if the upfront cost is less. So that's why reducing the upfront cost is important so that it doesn't become a barrier.
Well, part of the problem too, in a community like ours, it's not uncommon to have 4 or 5 cars in a household because you have a lot of adults living at home. I don't know if the grid is prepared to handle 5 cars charging at once overnight in one household.
Yeah, no, great question. I'm glad you asked. So part of what we're doing here, it's not just giving out rebates for EVs, but making sure that we do so in a way that doesn't strain the grid. So a couple of things there. The first is we do require our customers to get an incentive to switch to an hourly rate. So it incentivizes them to charge overnight so that they don't charge, at peak hours, 6, 7 p.m., which would require additional investments. And we're seeing that happen. Most customers charge overnight where the grid is really not at peak. And then also we're doing, for example, pilots for managed charging. For those of you who don't know, that's also a technology that other states are using that would allow us to say, hey, we will incentivize you if you charge at these hours and not those hours, in addition to the ongoing grid investments that we're making that will benefit all loads, including electric vehicles.
And the managed charging can be automatic, right? Yeah, the customer does,
Yeah.
the managed charging, there are technologies where you can plug in, forget it, and then at an optimal time, it's a little bit like the AC cycling, right?
Exactly,
Where it's controlled to
exactly.
benefit the grid.
It's like if any of you have a Nest and you tell the Nest, hey, adjust my temperature by 1 or 2 degrees when the grid needs it, it's similar. And lastly, and I promise this is my last one of the other pilots we're starting this year, it's called a vehicle to grid pilot. We're doing it with school districts. And Edith mentioned the battery in an electric vehicle can be a resource to the grid. If there's vehicles that are parked 90% of the time, that could be used actually to support the grid, right? And so that's another technology we're evaluating and other states are currently as well.
Mayor Letter?
You know, I was just gonna say, I know in our city, we're seeing more electric vehicles, throughout the city. And I know that, I guess we need that hand holding to try to figure out how do we bring charging stations into City Hall? Do we need to, start to move towards, electric vehicles and, Public Works or, in our, building department, I know those are easier, lifts for us. So, and we need to take advantage of, the funds that are available. So I think if we can reach out to you and, just try to get some hand holding.
We'll find you.
Okay.
Part of the problem,
Anybody else wants help, please just reach out.
just the location of charging stations. We had them at our Walgreens. They took them out because nobody's in Walgreens long enough to charge up their car. They go in to get their prescription, so they got rid of them. So you have to be judicious where you put these charging stations where people are gonna park for a long enough time to charge the car. I mean, just put them at City Hall. The only ones that'll use it will be the employees.
Along those lines, I've had a gentleman show up in my office recently, and he was looking for a gas station site of a minimum of at least 1.5 acres to 2 acres. And the idea being that on one side of the gas station, he'd have the gas pumps, and on the other side of the gas station, he'd have the electrical charging station. And in the middle, he would have this fairly large building where he would have, I don't know, a coffee shop, but he'd have some computer connections there where you could go in and hook up your computer while your car's charging and buy a cup of coffee. So they're out there looking, but he says trying to find a gas station site of a minimum of 1.5 acres is a pretty big, because most of the gas station sites are much smaller than 1.5 acres. But he said, safety-wise, he would want to separate the gas from the electric, and you got to also have a site that's got Commonwealth Edison supply lines nearby it, because you need a lot of power to charge this stuff up when you got a charging station sitting there. So there's sites that people are out there with good ideas, but you can't find a lot of sites in the region that have that on a busy highway where a gas station wants to be. And I should probably say where an electric station needs to be, because that'll probably be the changing name. But they're out there. There's a lot of different ideas. I got one site in Batavia that I've had 2 or 3 come, and it's an abandoned bank site. And it's right on the prime corner, and the bank's gone, but the site's too small for all these types of things to happen, because they need the ability to put in this stuff and separate the gas from the electric. Well, I guess no other questions. I thank you. This has been a very interesting conversation, so I thank you for coming in and doing it, and I appreciate the helpful attitude of Commonwealth Edison as you're trying to get us to all understand. And we probably should have you, I'm sure you probably are out meeting with some of the regional councils and sharing with them some of your ideas, because I know there's cities that are being pressed for this type of conversation, so.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And we are, but if any of you wants to have us over, please do not hesitate to reach out.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to go to 4.2 CMAP's air quality conformity analysis, and Russell's here.
All right, so you've just heard about stuff that's ongoing in the region. I'm going to give you a little bit different perspective from CMAP, since we are always looking out to the future. And we also have some regulatory things that we have to do. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of some of that. First slide. All right. So some of the things that we have to do, we have transportation conformity. That's what I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on. NEPA has certain requirements for our transportation projects and how they relate to the TIP and the long range plan. We also have CMAQ. Everybody's heard of CMAQ before. That's one of the funding streams that we have locally that is designed to fund programs that are reducing congestion and improving air quality. And then we have some policy level stuff that we do. We have a climate committee. We have onto 2050, our long range plan that'll have aspirational goals for how we address climate. And climate has always been one of our priorities, one of our key priorities in our long range plan. Next slide. So what is transportation conformity? It is a requirement. So the TIP and the long range plan both have to demonstrate that they are conformed. TIP projects that have specific work types. So that's the stuff that's like add lanes, new interchanges, things of that nature, things that are going to affect the network and the capacity and how we do some of our, basically how people move around. The things that are really going to affect that go through the conformity analysis. So there's a specific list, and those are projects that are judged to be of air quality concern. And this requires that the transportation activities conform to the state implementation plan. So there's a connection between what we do here in the TIP and for transportation conformity and what the Illinois EPA does. The Illinois EPA actually is who develops the state implementation plan, and they look at all the different sectors. So while we look at transportation, they look at housing, they look at point source, they look at a variety of things. And our transportation sector, I work with them to develop that, and we get a budget from them from the SIP, and we have to conform to that budget. Next slide. So what is it that we're specifically looking at? There's lots of pollutants that are out there. Specifically in our area, we are a non-attainment area for ozone. This has been the case since the Clean Air Act was passed. So this is not new. We have been making some progress, and we've also had a little bit backsliding. The previous standard, which is from 2008, was 75. I'm using kind of generic terms here. ppb means parts per billion. And the current standard is 70. That was set in, I think, 2015. We actually do not meet, as you can see at the top there, we don't meet the previous standard, and we're not meeting the current standard. So the previous standard, it's a little bit of a nuanced thing, but both the previous and the current standard are still the standards. Normally what happens is when there's a new standard, they revoke the previous one, and there's only one standard. There was some litigation, some lawsuits, and we actually have two standards to conform to. We don't conform to either one, as you can see here. And how it works in the region is we have 14 monitors for ozone. If any one of those monitors does not meet the standard, the region itself is considered to be a non-attainment. Well, as you can see, only 3 of our monitors are meeting the standard. So we have a long way to go. Typically, as you know, in the summer, you get the wind that blows up from the southwest. If you look, most of our monitors are in the northeast part of Illinois. So that's where ozone's being deposited. It's the Zion monitor. Chilwaukee is just on the other side of the Wisconsin border. And then Evanston and Northbrook are some of our highest ones. So the ozone, unlike some other pollutants, is not concentrated at a local level, but it gets deposited. There's a thing called ozone transport. So actually, if you were to look at monitors in Michigan, on just the other side of the lake, so those are some of the worst monitors in the Great Lakes region. They're not actually generating a lot of ozone on the other side of the lake, but we are depositing what we generate here on the other side of the lake frequently, depending on the weather patterns. So as you can see, we have a lot of work to do. So ozone and transportation conforming requirements, because of that, aren't going away. They're not going away anytime soon. These are all codified in law as part of the Clean Air Act. Next slide. All right, so ozone, just to get in a little bit of it, it really has 2 components. We call it ozone, but there's 2 precursors. There's VOC, which is volatile organic compounds, and there's NOx. And we actually have to conform to both. We have a budget that we work with the Illinois EPA on. For in their SIP, they actually have a motor vehicle emissions budget for both VOCs and for NOx. And we have to demonstrate conformity in the TIP and the long range plan for both pollutants. So we have a little slide up there, kind of shows you how these things are formed. Everybody knows ozone is really a summer problem. There are other types of pollutants, GHGs, that are kind of more year-round, or particulate matter that are more localized. But ozone, we all know, we've heard those ozone action days. You can predict when ozone's going to be bad. You know, it's normally when the temperature is between 88 and 92. We don't have a lot of wind. And what happens is you start generating ozone in the morning period, specifically how traffic patterns are now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when a lot of people go to the office. It kind of hangs around. The sunlight starts coming along. We have long daylight hours, June, July. We start generating more ozone in the really early afternoon now, as our traffic patterns really, anybody who's ever commuted now knows rush hour probably starts around 3:30. And we just keep contributing to it. So our highest ozone readings typically are in that 4 to 7 p.m. Range. And what it is for ozone, there are different standards, but this is an 8-hour average. Those numbers that you saw reflect an 8-hour average, that we're actually above the standard for 8 hours at a time. So this is not just a snapshot where it's like, you know, the temperature of the day was 75. This is over a long period of time throughout that time of the day. Next slide. All right. So we have to do transportation conformity. We have to do it for ozone. So what does that mean? It's a really involved modeling effort. We have a long range plan that goes out to 2050. We have to demonstrate that that plan conforms. So we have to come up with different ways to look into the future. We're not, you know, prognosticators. We don't have crystal balls. We're not doing that kind of way. We don't have shake the magic 8-ball anymore. But we have to come up with ways to do this. You just heard a whole bunch of discussion about electric vehicles. Well, we have to make certain assumptions from the modeling standpoint of how many electric vehicles there are going to be in the future, all the way out to 2050, and by different classes. So, you know, we heard light duty vehicles. That's just cars and SUVs and some pickups. But we have to look at the entire fleet mix, from buses to trucks to, you know, everything in between, and try to make some assumptions. So how do we do that? Well, we do that by a very sophisticated forecasting. We use a model called MOVES, which is our mobile vehicle emission simulator. And in there are some tools, and they have to deal with all kinds of regulatory things, average gasoline, you know, miles per gallon, CAFE standards are called, and other technologies and requirements that are already on the books that in the future will take place. We also have ways that we can look at fleet turnover. So, you know, if you have a certain type of car, how long does that car typically last in our region? You know, when do people start buying new cars? Is it 11 years? Is it 15 years? You know, how long and stuff like that. So we have to make assumptions on when the fleets will start to turn over. And when they turn over, what percentage of those might become electric vehicles or might become some alternative fuel. Sometimes there's compressed natural gas and things of that nature. So we have tools at our disposal to do that. In addition to using it for modeling, however, for the emissions side, we can also then use that same stuff to estimate revenues. So motor vehicle fuel tax, I know I've heard mayors talk about that and others have talked about that. You know, we have to be understanding the impact that EVs have on MFT long-term. Our long-term plan has to be physically constrained, as is our tip. So understanding what the fleet vehicle mix will be in the future will also help us to understand some of the revenue projections that we'll have for the future. You know, how much of it, what if we were, I think EVs pay about $250 a year for their sticker. That's a lot more than you pay if you have a gasoline tax. But is that enough? And as we look forward to the future, will that be enough or does it need to be different? This kind of emissions modeling can help us to understand the fleet vehicle mix, which will help us on our revenue projections, which will help us understand how much do we have available for transportation infrastructure improvements. And I believe that's my last slide. So with that, I'll take any questions. I tried to be quick.
Well, we thank you. We're starting to run a little tight on time.
Yeah, I understand.
Can I ask a quick question? If our community wasn't on that first slide, that spreadsheet that you posted, is there a way to get more data on what our parts per billion are?
You mean for the monitors?
Yes.
So those monitors, these are official monitors. There's a whole program in place. These are run by the Illinois EPA. They have to be approved, certified. These are the same locations that they've been since the Clean Air Act started. So you can't really be added to it. It's a network, it's a modeling network that's based on a whole bunch of stuff. They have to be in certain areas, like they can't necessarily be next to the interstate because they'll have an artificial reading. We used to have a monitor over here by the Sears Tower, and the CTA would change their buses there, and they would just park the bus and leave it on. We have to be careful of all that stuff. There's a lot that goes into where the monitor locations are. There's other monitors. These are just the ozone ones. There are other monitors for other types of pollutants, like particulate matter specifically, in different locations.
So then which one of those would be the best for the south suburbs?
Alsip, and then Chicago, it's a ComEd station, or Chicago Southwest FP, I forget what the FP stands for, might be. So that one, those are in the southwest and south parts of Chicago and parts of Cook County. I believe there's 3 monitors kind of in that area. So Chicago ComEd, Chicago SWFP, and then Alsip are all in that area.
And then where would we go to find out more information about other particulates?
So you can always send me an email. I'll be happy to share it with you. The Illinois EPA has a website that has a lot of air quality information. They publish an annual report. I will say it's a lot of technical jargon. It's not designed for Joe Public to read. It's regulatory requirements, so they have to put certain stuff in there, and it comes across that way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, we're going to have a brief report on the municipal survey results by Maya Dang.
Good morning, mayors. Thank you all for your time today. My name is Mai Dang, and I am a CMAP planner and the project manager for this year's municipal survey. Today, I would like to share with you the results of the municipal survey that was sent to every community across the region last September. Since 2012, the municipal survey has been sent to municipal governments every 2 years and covers a number of topic areas, which I'll describe later in this presentation. And please feel free to write down your questions, as there will be some time towards the end for me to answer some questions. Next slide, please. The municipal survey is one of the most important tools for CMAP to deepen our understanding of the region. The survey supports a variety of agency priorities, including tracking progress toward the benchmarks set forth in the On to 2050 Long Range Comprehensive Plan, and providing an accurate snapshot of current municipal priorities and challenges. Survey data is also used to measure demand for services such as CMAP's Technical Assistance Program. And in fact, we found that the survey provides reliable opportunities for us to verify our primary contacts at our communities, which are generally mayors such as yourself, or your village administrators and community development directors. Which leads me to my next question. Next slide, please. Who completed the 2024 municipal survey? In 2024, we saw a record-breaking 247 municipalities complete the survey for a total completion rate of 86.9 or 87%. Nearly all of these sub-regional councils saw a completion rate above 80% as well. And I'm happy to share a detailed breakdown of the municipal responses by sub-regional council if you would like to see me after this meeting. We couldn't have achieved this incredible response rate without the help of our planning liaisons and their unique relationships to our communities. I'd also like to sincerely thank each one of you mayors and your staff for helping CMAP better understand our communities through the municipal survey. Next slide, please. This year, CMAP staff were asked which topic areas and questions they were most interested in learning more about. These topic areas were identified as most valuable to our work at the agency. In the next few slides, I'll provide a high-level overview of the most important questions and their results. Next slide, please. So under the community development and technical assistance topic area, we asked what types of resources communities were most interested in that would help implement local plans, policies, or initiatives. The results show that more than 80% of communities indicate interest in direct financial assistance for projects. We also heard that notification of grant opportunities and grant writing support is very important to communities. Next slide, please. One of the most important findings for every municipal survey is to measure demand for various planning technical assistance. This data directly informs which assistance types will be offered with the annual CMAP call for projects, which my colleagues will discuss in the next presentation. This year, we learned that municipalities are interested in technical assistance that CMAP both currently offers and previously offered. For example, one of the top technical assistance, grant writing and management, directly aligns with what communities are seeking to help implement local plans and initiatives that we saw on the last slide. We also saw that 10% of municipalities reported unfamiliarity with CMAP's technical assistance program, which indicates that we still have some work to do. Still, this data will help guide CMAP's understanding of how to best address our community's needs from across the region. Next slide, please. The municipal survey also asked if municipalities have a greenhouse gas emissions reduction goal. Approximately 20 municipalities responded to this question, some with stated goals such as reducing emissions by 35% by 2035 or installing EV charging stations. Many also indicate that they don't have a goal, but would be interested in creating one. Next slide, please. The survey revealed municipalities need assistance with compliance with the ADA Title II regulations. Over 50% of municipalities indicate each one of these resources is valuable to their communities, many of which CMAP already offers through ADA trainings, as well as document templates that are already posted to CMAP's website. Next slide, please. This year, we also asked what are the top 3 transportation priorities for communities. And we heard that 54% are prioritizing improvements to safety and security, as some results indicate elevated levels of vehicle crashes are a persistent issue across the region. 40% of municipalities also indicated that preserving existing transportation infrastructure is important, as well as 37% indicated prioritizing increases to mobility and accessibility in their communities. Next slide, please. So what's next? Now that the municipal survey results are in, CMAP will continue to explore new opportunities to meet resources and data needs from our communities that need it the most. We will also use the data to inform existing project work, such as the RTP and the Climate Action Plan. We will also continue to use the data to strengthen community relationships through the local government network, which is the primary way some CMAP liaisons reach out to mayors and directors and municipal staff across the region. Next slide, please. Oh, I think this slide was a little bit out of order, but I think we can just move on to the next question.
Thank you. It was a very comprehensive report. Good information and something for us all to think about. So I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, and the next one.
4.04, next page. This is the important one.
Oh. Okay, call for technical assistance projects. Patrick Day.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. My name is Patrick Day, Principal Planner here at CMAP and Manager of our annual call for technical assistance. And I'm very excited to let you know that it's going to be opening very soon, March 10th. And it's going to be something done in partnership with the RTA to offer our services for a variety of technical assistance. It's something we do every year, and it's increasingly popular. And it gets into a lot of the things that Mai was talking about, as we've heard directly from municipalities that support is needed. So I'm going to do an overview of the call, what's being offered by CMAP and by the RTA, and then review the timeline for this, and then leave you a bit of time for any questions should you have them. First, the CMAP side of the call for projects, it's closely tied to our strategic plan, and it's meant to help with implementation of regional goals locally. And it's done, as I mentioned, every year in partnership with the RTA, and we undertake a menu of available technical assistance every year. Also, it's less than a week until it opens, and that's something we've been working at for the past couple of months. So we're very excited to have that for you, and any questions as it is open, we're more than willing to talk to you about any potential ideas you might have. We're going to offer 10 types of assistance this year. They're shown up there. A few of these are not requiring explanation. A few of them might be. We offered all of these last year except for housing readiness, which is a new type of assistance, which is going to analyze your local housing demand, availability, and land use, and identify any barriers to housing development in the community. And also the next program, it has it there in brackets, but that is customized plan implementation services. It's something that is provided recognizing that the efforts and the challenges of municipalities don't stop with creation of a long-range plan. A lot of times, a lot of those challenges are more the follow-up, and the work begins once that plan is in place. So we have a variety of plans, including bike and pedestrian plans and ADA self-evaluation and transition plans. Those were the most popular applications last year. And just to give a note on the competitiveness of it, it is a challenge to award as many as we can, but given existing resources, we can only award a limited set of those. We received 122 applications for assistance last year, and we were able to award only 30. But most requested were the two at the top. So this is what we are going to offer this year, and we're very excited to get the applications for it. And one last note on corridor plans, we do highly encourage multi-jurisdictional applications. If you do have a roadway that you would like to have a corridor study completed, if you would like to pursue that with a neighbor, we can help with that facilitation of putting people together, but likely you have the relationships in place either way. That's definitely encouraged. Moving on to the RTA's call for projects, they also do a lot of technical assistance, but with more emphasis on access to transit. They break their offerings into plan making and plan implementation. On the next slide is a breakdown of what they're offering. First are the planning studies. A lot of those are curb management studies, transit-oriented development plans, and then also some pretty unique and very helpful implementation steps for plans that are in place. They do offer zoning code updates for areas around transit stations to encourage TOD. There also are partnerships with ULI to bring in developers to get frank conversations going about your development sites and their potential at the current time, and also setting up of financing districts to achieve plan goals. Here we have the timeline. Again, it opens in less than a week, March 10th, and then it's going to be open until April 4th at noon. I probably should have put fireworks or underlined or at least bolded the fact that it's noon. Sometimes it's midnight, sometimes it's 5 p.m. It's noon. So that's an edit that we'll make. But it closes on April 4th. In between March 10th and April 4th, we have a team here at CMAP, which stands ready to hear any idea whatsoever. We do like to help with any matchmaking if you're looking to do multi-jurisdictional, or if you have several ideas and you're wondering which one might be the strongest application to put in this year. We love having those conversations. But just to give you what happens after April 4th, CMAP and the RTA will review the applications and follow up with many of those for interviews to learn more about what you propose, and then have the selection and the awarding of the technical assistance in sometime between May and July. So with that, I will thank you for your time. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Patrick Day. Please don't hesitate to reach out. And if it is more potentially for the RTA, you can include Michael Horsting, who leads the call for the RTA side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, next one is legislative update from Ryan.
Good morning, Mayors. I'll try to be brief in my remarks. I think I'm the last item on the agenda before we sort of wrap up. So I'm Ryan Gugis. I'm an intergovernment affairs specialist with CMAP's intergovernment affairs team. I appreciate coming before the council as a mayor this morning. Next slide, please. So today I'm here to talk about HB 3784, the Strengthening Communities Initiative. CMAP, as you all may be aware, CMAP, we're both the region's federally designated metropolitan planning organization, as well as the state authorized regional planning agency. So the General Assembly created CMAP through the Regional Planning Act in 2005, but they never appropriated any funding to support our work. So next slide, please. So these are the outlined on the slide here are our state RPA functional components. This is what we're required to do under the Regional Planning Act. And essentially, again, the state never provided funding for some of this work. So next slide, please. All right, so these are the three of the several that was just listed that CMAP has to sort of find other sources of funding to perform and to execute. Our limited funding prevents us from meeting our state mandate when the General Assembly created us 20 years ago. These components are partially funded through federal transportation, but the non-transportation related components under the RPA are not funded by the General Assembly. So this gap in funding prevents us from meeting, again, that state mandate when it falls outside of transportation related activities. Next slide, please. I know we talked about the municipal survey and our call for projects, and we know that despite this funding from the General Assembly, that the needs of local communities continue to grow each year. Since 2012, CMAP, we've conducted that municipal survey, right? And we had a really high response rate from the 2004 municipal survey, about 86%. And through the municipal survey, we learned that our partners can, they want to continue working with CMAP in terms of our long range planning. And also 150 of those 284 municipalities do not have embedded planning staffers to meet those critical day-to-day needs and those short-term needs that sometimes arise unexpectedly. Next slide, please. For over a decade, right, CMAP has provided planning resources to communities throughout Northeastern Illinois. It has assisted communities with more than 300 planning projects. In 2024, we really like to highlight this. We received 122 applications in response to our call for projects, but we were only able to award a quarter of those projects. Again, this year's call for projects is opening up, and we expect the many of those communities that didn't receive assistance to reapply. And CMAP really helps to fill the gap for many of those communities, but a lot of times that local need exceeds the agency's ability to offer that long range planning. Next slide, please. CMAP response to the call, right? We know that local municipalities need dynamic, responsive, and adaptive resources to address the day-to-day and immediate needs, but CMAP's funding limits our ability to provide that timely support. These examples highlighted on the slide illustrate some immediate and evolving needs from our communities that go beyond the long-range planning and beyond our transportation-related funding. Our ability to provide this type of assistance is inconsistent because of how we're funded, right? So while long-term planning is essential, right? And I know we kind of highlighted some of those those long-term planning needs that are available during this year's call for projects. We know that, if CMAP is to meet the needs of our communities in the region, that we need to be more adaptable and responsive to those immediate planning needs to help address those unexpected challenges. Next slide, please. So yeah, just tying it all together, right? Again, HB 3784 appropriates $2 million to CMAP to support the planning functions and programs required under the Illinois Regional Planning Act. CMAP, as I mentioned, CMAP derives most of its funding from the federal government for the activities associated with being a federal MPO. But again, these funds can only be used for eligible transportation uses. And our ongoing engagement, has revealed that local communities, those needs go beyond the limits of this funding. Reliable funding from the General Assembly would empower CMAP to fulfill its obligations under the RPA and would also strengthen communities by expanding support to counties and municipalities and enhance that responsiveness to those evolving planning needs. The IGA team will continue working with members of the General Assembly to advance this initiative. We've already garnered the support of several legislators from across the region in a bipartisan manner, and we're continuing to add more support for this initiative. We're also excited to share that the Illinois Municipal League and the Illinois State Association of Counties are both in support of HB 3784. So I just think it speaks to a lot of those stakeholders and individuals that understand the value that CMAP provides is supporting this initiative. And I'll just round it out by saying that again, this is about being dynamic and responsive to your needs and to needs of your local communities. This isn't just write CMAP a check, right, and give us some money, but it's to still fulfill those long-term planning needs, but also to be able to be adaptive and responsive to some of those challenges that arise that you may not know where to turn to for support. And CMAP, being the MPO, is here to sort of fill in those gaps for your local community. So and with that, I'm happy to take any questions or provide any follow-up information.
Any questions? Thank you for your good work. You're going to be a busy guy, I got a feeling, with the stuff.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
coming down
yeah.
the
We get
road.
running up on a lot of deadlines coming up. So, but I would encourage you all to, take this back to your councils and to your local communities and, let them know that CMAP is this funding is about you, right, in your communities. And, should we get this funding, that it allow us to be, again, a little bit more dynamic and adaptive and responsive, and also allow CMAP to, meet our mandate required under the Regional Planning Act. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, getting ready to wrap the meeting up here. Does anybody on the committee have anything they want to bring up or say, or? All right, do we have any public comment? No public comment. All right, our next meeting will be Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025 at 9:30 here in this office. And appreciate everybody's willingness to come. I think we'll probably have some new faces with the elections that are about to take place, and we'll see how we carry forward here. So with that, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment. Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.